Okay, this is Vince Trebecki, and we are talking about cell-mediated immune response. So we have our invader, played by my wife. We have the dog bed, which is going to be our macrophage, our white blood cell. We have our smaller white blood cell, Maggie, and she is our helper T cell from the white blood cell family. She's identified by her bright red collar, and that'll be important later. And then we have Haas, our killer T cell. Lie down. Good. And our killer T cell is just going to hang out here for a little bit until he has a little bit more of an important role. So, what happens? Well, first we have our invader that comes in, our foreign body, floating around. And next comes our macrophage, or our white blood cell, which is going to go and engulf the invader. So invader goes and gets engulfed by the macrophage, right? And a digestion process begins. And as this digestion process begins, there are peptide fragments that get combined with proteins from the macrophage. So the proteins from the macrophage and peptide fragments from the invader combine together, right? And to create this sort of antigen complex that gets pushed to the surface of the macrophage, right? And so now we've got this antigen complex on the surface of the macrophage. So go ahead and let's see our antigen complex at the surface of the macrophage. There's our antigen complex, and there's the surface of the macrophage. And here is our helper T cell, right? And our helper T cell then comes along, and oh look, it bumps into this macrophage and connects, and now we have this connection here, right? And so at this point, the helper T cell is going to back away, and it's going to excrete some chemical signals, and it's going to start to multiply and divide. And as it's doing that, as it starts to do that, Maggie May, oh yes, that's a good girl, Maggie May, right? As it starts to call in some help from those from that chemical signal, right? It calls for those killer T cells, all right? And that's when the killer T cell comes racing in, right? But the killer T cell doesn't just go for any cell, okay? It looks for the specific, right, sick cells, or the specific infected cells or macrophages that have the same antigen complex as before. So they have to match. They can't not match. And so once that killer T cell finds that antigen complex that matches it, they bind with receptors, right? And he will excrete some toxins that go and destroy our invader, right? And the whole process of the killer T cell, right, is it divides rapidly when it's stimulated by chemicals from the helper T cell. That's why that helper T cell is hanging around, right? It's interested, secreting some chemicals, and here's this killer T cell just doing what killer T cells does and just wants to kill it, right? Just get after it. Once it's gone and completed that process, those rapidly divided killer T cells go and seek out other antigens of the same complex, of the same antigen complex, to go and destroy. And that is how our cell-mediated immune response works. Thank you, everybody. Maggie May, Oscar Boy, and Kendra.